In section 2.2, it's titled Use a Problem-Solving Strategy. So this is where they're going to give us some word problems. That's what we call them sometimes, story problems. But at the beginning of this section in the textbook, they want you to just really have some positive thoughts. You can do this. You got this. You just have to say, I've practiced these, and I, go to the examples, and you can't do too many examples of these. You just keep at it, and they'll get easier. But I know it's difficult at first, so we'll give you some steps you can follow. But we have 3 examples here, and then we'll go on and there's more videos that will help. Okay, so in example 1, Guillermo bought textbooks and notebooks at the bookstore. The number of textbooks was 3 more than twice the number of notebooks. A lot of times that's the part students don't care for. He bought 7 textbooks. How many notebooks did he buy? Okay, so let's see what we have here. We have to go through and we have to kind of pull it out piece by piece. So Guillermo goes to the store, he's buying textbooks, he's buying notebooks. I'm going to use T for textbooks and N for notebooks. You could use X and Y, that would be fine, but to me it makes sense to use T for textbooks. Sometimes you have to be careful with the variables you choose. You don't want to use O for something because then it's going to look like 0. But okay, now that's what he's buying, textbooks, notebooks. What we're doing is we're setting up our variables here. Oh, no, that's okay. You can do it this way, but yeah, okay. The number of textbooks, okay, so the number of textbooks was 3 more than twice the number of notebooks. See, we don't really have 2 variables yet, but we do right here. Okay, so that's okay. The number of textbooks was 3 more than, okay, so plus 3, right? Something plus 3, twice the number of notebooks. So that's going to be the 2, that's going to be twice the number of notebooks. Okay, so this statement, this sentence says, the number of textbooks is going to be 3 more than twice the number of notebooks. Okay? All right. Now, he bought 7 textbooks. Okay, so we know that T is 7. So that's nice. So we know T is 7. The information that they give us, our goal is to get an equation out of that information. So whatever we have to do, set up the variables, we could draw pictures or whatever that helps us, but at some point we have to get to an equation so we can solve that equation. Now, the question is, how many notebooks did he buy? So we're trying to solve for N. We have an equation with N in it, so that's good. We're going to subtract 3. The good news on these problems is usually the equations aren't too bad to solve. Sometimes it takes a minute to get the equations. So let me go over here and write 4 equals 2n. Okay, and divide both sides by 2. And so we get n equals 2. Now they don't really want the answer to be like that. They want you to say something like, Guillermo bought 2 notebooks, or he bought 2 notebooks. So I'm just going to say 2 notebooks. They would prefer a complete sentence, but that's how you would talk if that were in the real world problem. You'd say, oh, Guillermo bought 2 notebooks. Okay, so here are the steps that we were talking about. We have to read the problem. And the first time you read it, you want to kind of just get an idea of what the problem's talking about, kind of get your bearings, what's going on in the problem. If it helps to draw a picture, draw a picture. Sometimes it helps to draw a chart on some of them, but I don't know that we'll need that for the problems we'll be doing. Does it involve some kind of circle or a rectangle, something we could draw? Variable. You have to establish what the variable is going to be. Now, on the problem we just did, I had 2 variables going on. I knew we were talking about textbooks, and I knew we were talking about notebooks. Now, later on, we're going to do what are called system of equations with 2 variables, but right now we only get to have 1 variable. Fortunately, in the problem, they told us the number of textbooks, so then we could replace that with the number. Eventually, though, we want to get that equation. Once we have the equation, we forget that it's a word problem. We solve the equation and we check it. Does it make sense? Like if I'd gotten -2, that wouldn't make any sense. You can't buy -2 textbooks, right? So we're looking for things like that, if our answer makes sense. Or if I'd gotten like 2.5, that wouldn't be right because you can't buy half a notebook. So check for those things. Check and see if your answer makes sense, you know. If you take the number of notebooks 2 and you double it and add 3, does that get you 7? You know, and it does. Okay. And then finally you have to answer the question. Like I said, they mentioned answering it with a complete sentence. Okay. Those are the steps. So here's our first problem. Look how short it is, or our second problem. The sum, okay, so I'm going to be adding something. Add, let's put an addition sign. Oh, I should read the whole problem first. The sum of 4 times a number and 2 is 14. Find the number. So we're just talking about numbers. We're not talking about books or bananas or anything. We're just talking about numbers here. The sum, okay, so now I'm going to go through and I'm going to read it again, but I'm going to pull out the pieces. So sum means addition. There's my addition sign right there. And what are we adding? Well, we're going to add 4 times a number. I think I'll let n represent number. So 4 times a number. And, okay, that's representing the plus right there. Okay, that's the addition sign. 2. The word is going to be the equal sign. So usually is means equal, or it could be was. I think in the last problem there was a was statement. But that's going to be our statement of equality. So we're saying the sum of these two things is or equals 14. We got the equation. And I know it's easier when I do them. My students always tell me that, oh, it's easy when you do them. But the more you practice, the easier they'll get. You just have to go slow and kind of pull it all out. Once we have the equation, we go back to our solving steps. Subtract 2, 4n equals 12, divide by 4, and we get n equals 3. So what does it mean? It says find the number. Well, the number is 3. Yeah, the number could have been anything. It could have been negative. It could have been a fraction. It doesn't say it has to be an integer or anything, but 3 is a number, so we could check it, but that looks right. Okay, so here's another problem. The sum of 2 numbers is negative 23. One number is 7 less than the other. Find the numbers. Okay, so there are 2 numbers. Instead of using letters, I'll say first number, second number. And I don't know which one's bigger. I just have to have a way to establish, okay, there are 2 numbers. And eventually those are going to get added together and it equals 23. This is another number problem. So sometimes it's hard for me to slow down and remember this is like the second problem you've seen like this. So, but I read the problem and I go through and I say, well, it's talking about numbers. What information do I have? I know there are 2 numbers. It says one of the numbers, okay, so we'll just say the first number, is 7 less than the other. So if I make this x, say I make the second number x, then x minus 7 would be the other number, because the one number is 7 less than the other. Now, you could switch it. You could have made the first number x and the second number x minus 7. But one of the 2 numbers is 7 less than the other number. Okay. Now, back to the first sentence. The sum of the 2 numbers. So if I take the first number plus the second number, is, there's the is, equals negative 23. Now, they actually spelled out negative 23, so I have to change that to the symbols. Okay, there's my equation. Forget that it's a word problem. I don't need those parentheses. There's nothing to distribute other than 1. So x and x, that's 2x. And so now I'm going to add 7 to both sides. And you'll notice as we work these equations, as we solve these equations, you see a lot of the same steps at the end, kind of the same steps. Get x by itself, Okay, negative 23 plus 7, so I've got a negative 23 in the bank, deposited $7. Now I've got negative $16. Okay, one more step, that's the divide by that coefficient, so we're going to divide by 2. And we get x equals negative 8. Okay. Now, if I go back and I look at the question, it says find the numbers. So one number is negative 8. So I could say, well, the second number, according to what I have written, is negative 8. The other number is 7 less. So the first number, according to the way I have it, has to be -8 minus 7. Okay, so I'm putting in that x that I just figured out, and I have to subtract 7. That's going to be -15. So here's one of my numbers, and here's the other number. I'm going to answer the question now. The numbers are -8 and -15. Now, you can do a quick check. Is one number 7 more than the other number, or is one number 7 less than the other number? Yeah. Do they add up to be -23? They do. So that's the check. You could write it out, but there it is.